Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1699. The topic is Q&A and the title is, How Can I Manage Feeling Nervous? So one of my clients, we've been working through some squats. They used to have a hip shift and twisting in their squat. So we started working together to address that. We've made progress. We've hit some new PRs without any twisting. Everything is going really well. Now, there are always challenges that come up. The challenge that she is now facing is she is approaching new weights. She's approaching weights that she's never squatted before. She is still learning like the new technique aspect. She's still learning basically to trust her body, to trust the cues, and just trust that she's going to be okay. Now, that is something a lot of people struggle with. If you're coming back from an injury, if you have always had something that always slightly is nagging, and now all of a sudden it's feeling good, you're nervous it's going to come back, maybe you have a competition coming up, we can all relate with the feeling of being nervous when it comes to either a moment in training or a competition. So she wrote in the journal, all my clients have weekly journals, we communicate back and forth every single week. So she wrote, I'm already starting to feel nervousness about squatting 185 this week. Is there anything I can do to kind of psych myself up throughout the week? So I wrote a response. I just want to kind of read through it and kind of elaborate on it. But what I wrote back was I said, ask yourself these questions. Why are you nervous? What will happen if you don't get it? What does it mean if you don't get it? So if you don't get that 185-pound squat, what will happen? And what does it mean? So we look at the first question there. Why are you nervous? And it's like, well, at first it's you. I'm assuming most people, like when you say, why are you nervous? They're like, well, Jesus, freaking heavyweight. So you tend to get kind of defensive right away. But why are we nervous? So I think back in times I've had competitions when I've gone for big weights, especially coming back after injuries and you're finally at like the weight that used to, like that injured you in those kind of moments. Why are you nervous? Well, you're nervous you're either going to get hurt again. You're nervous that, if you don't get it, you've put a lot of work into this, and what does it mean? If I don't get this, I worked super hard for it, and it fails, was my work even worth it? So we tend to, when thinking, why are you nervous? That's such a general question, we struggle to answer it. But we tend to have sense of nervousness due to the story that we tell ourselves around the competition or around the lift or around the moment. There's this narrative, there's this elaborated and built upon kind of belief, this story. So when you think to yourself, the next question, what will happen if I don't get it? So what happens if she doesn't get the 185-pound squat? Well, she squats in a squat rack that has safety supports. She knows how to set the safety supports up correctly. If she goes down to the bottom, she can't stand up. She just lets the bar drop into the safety supports, and then she stands up and walks away. So what happens if I don't get it? Well, nothing. If she doesn't get it. She might be fearful of getting hurt. Her technique has been super clean. Everything looks crisp. There's no reason why she would get hurt. Any other reason than if she was doing, dumbbell chest presses for a set of 10, the same kind of crap luck. She might, get a cramp in a muscle. She might tweak her shoulder. She might be moving something at the house and she slips on a rug. I mean, she's so clean with her technique. The technique is built in well. We've already been hitting PRs. We know that now the risk of injury would be the same as the risk of injury anywhere else. There's nothing special about this lift. There's no greater reason or greater risk with this lift than there would be with anything else that we do. So what happens if you don't get it? Nothing, really. You go to the bottom, you don't stand up, you leave the weight at the bottom, and then you stand up. What does it mean if you don't get it? Nothing. Doesn't mean anything. If you get a little nervous and you get to the bottom, you're out of position and you can't push it quite back up. Oh well, we unload the weights, we put the bar back. If we're fresh in the workout, we still have good energy, maybe we try it again. If we're kind of psyched up, and we oh geez, there's no way I'm going to do this. Now I'm way too nervous. We just come back in a week and we try it again. There's really, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean everything you did is a failure. You can come back to the next competition. You can come back to the next workout. You can always come back. Even if you have an injury, you can come back. I've helped people get in, who have had injuries, come back and beat their best ever PRs, even after the injuries. And I'm talking major, major injuries, like muscle tears, a whole bunch of big things. So I continued and I wrote, as you think through the answers to these questions, you'll likely realize that the context of the nervousness is independent of reality. Meaning we're nervous even when the impact of the thing we're nervous about isn't that significant. That then leads us to question, if I'm nervous even when it isn't that significant, am I making this feel more significant than it really is? And then do I need to be not nervous in order to be successful? So those are two really good questions. Am I making this feel more significant than it really is? Probably. Just flat out, the truth of it is probably yes. Your story is bigger than the moment. We need to recognize that and kind of rewrite the story. If I don't get it, I come back next workout, I come back next competition, and I keep moving on. There has not been a successful person in any endeavor, sport, fitness, business, anything, that hasn't had moments of failure, moments of setbacks. I read a lot of business books, and it's funny how many businesses that we think are successful went through bankruptcy about 7,000 times and or have so many destroyed and broken relationships. It was just an insanely chaotic route in order for them to get to where they are. In no way whatsoever was it just a succession of successes. There was failure, success, failure, 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 success, failure, 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 success. That's how it goes. Same thing with athletes. The best athletes in the world still have bad days. So I went on and I wrote, nerves are a normal part of attempting something that challenges our comfort zone, that challenges our status quo. Professional athletes still get nervous even though they're the best in the world at what they do. And that's often because if they don't do well, they have significant impact. Their stories are actually way bigger than ours. If they're not nervous, they typically they're not going to be nervous whether or not they can do it. They're going to be nervous because of what happens if they just have a bad day, a bad moment, if there's something outside of their control that impacts their performance, if it just turns out that they can't do it that day, that moment. If they have a bad experience, they can lose their contract. They can lose sponsors. And then what people will say about them might reflect poorly on their family, cause stress to their family, might reflect poorly on their team, on their legacy. And the list goes on. The most successful people in the world still get nervous before big games, big meetings, big moments. Being nervous is not something you have to get rid of. It's not something you should fight against. It's not something that you should just not be. If you're challenging your comfort zone, if you're challenging your status quo, you 100% will be nervous. It's a normal human emotion that if I'm in a place of comfort and I'm going to doing something that challenges that comfort, our instinctual response is to not do that thing. Our body loves comfort. If I have anything that risks comfort, my body is going to heighten my alertness, my awareness of what could go wrong, and it's going to make me consider really consider if what I'm about to do is worth it, if it's worth losing the comfort. That's a normal human emotion. The game then becomes, how can I do my best while being nervous? So I asked my client, for you, for this upcoming squat workout, what is within your control that you can do in order to still have the best outcome, even though you will be nervous? And I actually asked her to make a list. So I'm thinking about this. If I'm thinking about a workout or a competition, I want to be able to have the proper rest and recovery leading into that day. And that could be, depending on the intensity of what you're doing, that could be a week or so ahead of time. That could be a day or so ahead of time. You want to make sure you get good sleep. So maybe you're making sure you take like a sleep aid like melatonin or something at an appropriate time. You try to get off electronics at an appropriate time. Try to get to bed at like the best hour that you normally would. Try to really take care of your sleep. Make sure you eat well for the week or the couple days leading up to the event. Make sure you eat well on the day of the event. Make sure you're hydrated. These are all things that will impact how we feel, which will then impact how well we do. And they're all within our control. We can also go through our cues. So this client knows the cues that are important for them, that are going to help them continue to move their best. They've already been moving their best. They've already been hitting PRs. Think about where you first ever started to where you are now. You're likely in brand new territory already. And what has gotten you through every step along the way is trusting the process, taking care of the elements that are within your control, and paying attention to your cues. There's a lot of elements that are within our control that we can focus on, and we can put our energy towards those things, being proactive. Make sure you get good sleep. Make sure you have your food ready. Make sure you pay attention to your cues. A lot of my clients write down their cues on cue cards, like index cards. Maybe they'll write down their cues on their program. You just be proactive with what you can control. If you're focused on those elements, you might have glimpses and kind of moments where you think about the elements you can't control, or what's going to happen after the squat. But if you're proactive, if you continue to focus on the things that are within your control, and you do the things that you can to account for the things that are within your control, you're going to be busy. You're going to set yourself up for the best possible situation, the best possible outcome, and it'll either go well or it won't. If it goes well, great. You're going to be super happy. But again, you're going to be nervous at the very next PR attempt, at the very next competition. This is going to be something that's just a continual process. You will always be nervous. So make a list of what you can control, focus on those things, stay busy, and crush the day. Do what you do. Do what has gotten you to where you are now. You can do it. Remember that the story you tell yourself around the moment is often bigger than the actual moment. Remember that anyone who has been successful has had momentary failures. If you happen to fail, it does not define you. You can come back and crush it anyhow. Crush it at a later date. And then, for this attempt, pay attention to everything you possibly can that's within your control. Focus on those elements. Don't worry about what's outside of your control. You'll be busy enough with the stuff you can do. Focus on your cues. Show up. Do your best. Let it be what it is. There is no magic cure for nervousness. You will be nervous. Nervousness is normal. It's a human reaction that if you probably turn off, you're going to be a psychopath. So just learn how to work with it. You can still be successful and be nervous. Those two can go hand in hand, and they often do. Actually, they all of the time do. Okay, well, I hope that conversation helped in some way. If you do struggle with nervousness, it's normal. just control what you can. Understand that, again, the story you're telling yourself is probably bigger than what the reality is. And no singular moment will define you. Try your best, control what you can, crush the day. Good luck. If you have any questions, if you need anything, email me at brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you like our podcast, please share it. The more people we share it with, the more people can help. If you like the podcast, you can also consider donating to support the podcast and all of its crazy costs. If you want to donate, you can do so on our website at www.brutalirongym.com. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and please follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.